So my wife and I were hiking in Snoqualmie Pass, about a mile above Snoqualmie Falls, at a place called Horseshoe Falls. And there was a bridge that had all sorts of water and whatnot. The bridge and rocks and water. It just was beautiful. A total display of God's power. And I decided I wanted to take a picture of this scene with my Insta Polaroid throwaway super deluxe camera. Not sure about the super deluxe part, but so in order to really get a good shot, I needed to take a step off the trail onto a rock. Now, this rock was slightly slanted, probably about that way, but I was okay because I had my hiking boots on. So the rock had water that was spraying on it from the bridge, rocks, and whatnot, uh, and kind of getting a little bit wet, but I was okay because I had my hiking boots on. Now, the rock, because of the water, had a little bit of green stuff on it. Most people would call it moss. And for those that don't know, when moss gets wet, it gets slippery. I was soon to find that out firsthand. But I was okay because, well, I had my hiking boots on. And as I stepped down on it, I've never been one that's been very fond of Michael Jackson. I just haven't. But what I found was I suddenly understood his moonwalk steps backwards as I was gaining momentum. I didn't know I knew how to do that. But in that situation, that day, Father's Day weekend, I suddenly knew how to do that. And as I'm moonwalking down, it occurred to me that there was this wooden sign just in place there that I probably should have heeded. But I knew I was going to be okay because I had my hiking boots on. On that sign were three simple words. Words that I didn't see needed to apply to me. Stay on trail. Well, I had chosen not to do that. I had chosen instead to step off trail, and now I was doing a Michael Jackson moonwalk dance as I was heading towards the river, which at this time of year was class 4 to 5 rapids. You should probably know that I don't swim. I don't know why you should know that, but it's something that I just keep in the back of your mind. Because, you see, the reason you don't need to know that is there was this rock down at the very bottom that was just a flat rock. And I knew that all I needed to do was stop at that rock and wait for somebody to come get me out of the jam I just got myself into. Of course, I had two things that were working against me: momentum and gravity. When I got to that flat rock at the bottom, I didn't stop. Suddenly, I realized I had a new talent that I had never explored before. I could fly. Now, I didn't fly good and I didn't fly long, but I did fly momentarily until I heard splash. And when I heard splash and saw all the water coming around me and whatnot, I knew that was going to be a bad idea. Oh, by the way, when I hit the water, a guppy jumped up, grabbed my glasses, and took off. Okay, so much for the guppy. That's not true. But what is true is that I had a vision of 400, 600. You know those Coke bottle glasses that kids wore when they were a kid? Well, that's me. The only difference for me was LASIK. Now I have 20/20 to my knowledge. And now I'm without glasses. I can't see. I have no idea what's ahead. But I do surface and I reach out for the shore. Say this is a shore, and I could barely touch the shore, and that was about it. The water had other ideas. The class 4 to 5 rapids that I don't swim had other ideas, and it started me on a journey. Now, have you ever seen that water churn and whatnot within like what I call a bowl and pitcher, where there's just a lot of power churning and whatnot? Well, so have I, from the other side. And as I'm below my watery grave and looking up, and I'm seeing and I'm spinning just like the water is now, I'm saying, God, this body needs that air. Help. Well, fortunately, I didn't hit my head in the whole process, but I did surface. Now, in the process before I surfaced, my wife, who's watching this whole process take place, is like, I didn't just see my husband go over a plunge. Then she saw my hat do the same thing. And she knew that she had seen what she didn't want to see, and she went for help. The first car that she stopped, she came up to and said, "Do you have a cell phone?" This is the early days of the cell phone. Well, they didn't have a cell phone, but may I implore that if somebody comes to you with panic and making a request, even if you can't fill the request, the logical answer would be, how can I help? Well, that wasn't their answer. They just simply said no and drove on. So she stopped in the second car, which did happen to have a cell phone. They handed it to her and she called 911. Now, 911 asked, well, how far is it from the trail to the water? Well, the answer to that question is 50 to 100 feet. So, given that a mile down the road is Snoqualmie Falls, which is a major tourist stop, um, if I make it that far, which I might not, but if I make it that far, I'm going over Snoqualmie Falls. I don't think tourists came to watch me perish over a major, massive waterfall. But that's, if I made it that far, that's where I'm headed. So they got a helicopter going my way. They got fire engines going my way. They got ambulances going my way, all to attempt to rescue me. Downstream from me is a father with his two kids. They're fishing, Father's Day weekend. What I haven't mentioned yet is that this river that I'm going down is glacier fed in June. In other words, it's cold. So when I surface, I try and assess my situation, and I see this great big rock ahead of me. And I'm thinking, this problem is over. I'm just going to get to that rock, climb up the rock, and wait for rescue. I'm not sure if you've ever tried to climb a wet rock with 40 to 50 mile an hour water hitting your backside. May I not recommend that you try that? At least I know for me, it didn't work. Instead of climbing up the rock, I just simply was taken around the rock. Now, the father that's down the shore is saying, what is that stupid idiot doing? That's who I was in this point, is I was the stupid idiot. Why? Because I didn't read that little sign that said, stay on trail. So as I'm going further down, I go over another plunge and I surface again. At this point, the father says, okay, so he's a stupid idiot, but he's one that's in trouble. And as I'm getting closer and closer to where he is, where they're fishing at is kind of a shallow spot. There's water there, yes, but it's largely just rocks and whatnot. And I'm able to grab my feet. Now, my feet at this point are going like this. I don't have feet. I don't have legs. I have jello or spaghetti. I have something like that, but it's definitely not working well for me. And without my glasses on, I look over at the shore and I see shadows. And, well, I holler help. And it's right outside a camping area, so I'm thinking what we're going to do is get a human chain going. I hear someone from the shore say, hang on, we're coming. Get a human chain out to me, grab onto me, pull me out. That's all that needs to happen. I hear splashing and everything as movement is being made towards me and whatnot. You know, I can see ahead of me, just like the one that I was taking a picture of, there's another bridge with more rocks and lots of water. If I lose my grip here, I'm going through that, which I don't think is a good idea. Finally, the lead person gets out to me and says, reach behind you and lock arms. I do, and now all the human chain needs to do is pull me out. They pull, I don't budge. They pull, I don't budge. This is not the time to have a weak human chain. But apparently that's what I'm faced with. So the lead person tells me, roll over and get on your stomach. So I roll over, and for the first time, I'm able to see my human chain of one person. Now, I got in this place because I'm a stupid idiot. What does it mean if somebody volunteers to get in? Well, he tells me to start crawling. So I start crawling and whatnot. I'm making my way out and whatnot. And suddenly my eyes just start to go dark. I'm getting dizzy. My eyes are starting to play games with me. And I'm saying, I turn to him and I say, I'm going to pass out. He stabilizes me on a rock and he says, you do whatever you need to do. You ain't going nowhere. And for what seemed like about 10 minutes, we sit there. To my knowledge, I didn't pass out, but I feel like I got really close. After a length of time, I don't know how long it was, he said, okay, we need to make it the rest of the way. And so we made it the rest of the way. I got to shore, and that's when the fire department showed up. I truly believe that if it had not been for that Good Samaritan, I wouldn't be standing here today. He risked his life, and in some ways, I wish he wouldn't have. Here's why. He had 2 young boys standing on the shore. The story that I've just shared with you is one obituaries are made of. And I'm certain that the probability of my demise was high. Further, if somebody is attempting to rescue someone who is in a life-threatening situation, they oftentimes are also caught into the same watery grave in this case. Praise God, we both made it out. We both made it to shore. And that's when the fire department showed up. I personally don't believe the fire department would have been on time. I don't believe that I could have held that long to start a rescue at that point, especially since my eyes, I had a wrestle with potential passing out already. If it had not been for this Good Samaritan, my life would have ended that day. Praise God, that's not the way that it ended. And in fact, in some ways, it's the way it began. The fire department got there and they said, okay, we're going to carry you on this stretcher out. I said, no, you're not. And they said, no, we are going to carry you on the stretcher out. I said, look, I'm not unduly hurt. I need to walk out of this. I got myself into this mess. I need to walk out of this for my own sanity. And they said, okay, well then we're going to walk beside you. And I said, you're welcome to walk beside me, but you're not going to put me on that stretcher. They didn't. And on the way home, some of my other testimonies that I'm going to share, I'm going to talk about something really personal, something people don't generally talk about. It's called suicide. And the bout I've had with it through my life. But this day on the way home, I got this overwhelming sense of wanting to live stronger than I've ever experienced before. And I knew, well, along with wanting to live, I got survivor's guilt. Now, survivor's guilt is going through a traumatic situation and wondering why you're the one that stayed alive. Knowing how many other people have perished in the exact same situation or similar. Why am I alive? Well, that's going to be a future testimony. God told me that day, I have a plan for you, and it's going to be a plan that no one else can fulfill because you have a special talent that I've given you that you don't know about yet. So that's a future testimony. And I'll look forward to sharing more of my journey, my walk, my relationship that has been developed with a father and son as a result of life's trials.